Life has been first-rate for Rob and Marla. They've saved plenty of money for retirement and live in an upscale neighborhood on a scenic golf course with other well-heeled couples. Today has been a good day like all the others, but it's nearly bedtime, so the usual ritual begins. Marla sits at her vanity table, crowded with candy-colored makeup flasks, bottles and jars stacked edge to end, while Rob cradles another thriller novel, safe in the bunker of his favorite overstuffed chair. Marla studied herself in the mirror.
Good thing your eyes are going, otherwise you'd notice you're living with an old woman.
Don't forget that I'm older than you are. In dog years, I'm already dead.
She plucked a stray hair from an already thin eyebrow. Rob bent the spine of the book wide to save his place and balanced it on his knee. He knew where the conversation was going, and he hoped to head it off with a touch of humor.
I tell myself that aging isn't just lost youth. It's a new stage of exploration and strength.
He faked an exaggerated wheezing cough like an old man. She didn't smile, remaining undistracted, intent on studying her imperfections in the magnifying mirror. Her unblinking eye appeared monstrous to Rob, reminding him of a circus giant.
All my friends are getting their faces done. Maybe I should too.
She swabbed off the day's makeup with a practiced motion and contemplated her old eyes staring at her.
I can't stand to see my mother looking back at me in the mirror.
But Rob returned to his novel and didn't reply. He knew this would only restart an old argument. Rob didn't look up from his reading.
But you know it's different for men. On you they call it character, but on me they're just wrinkles. You don't want to be married to an old lady, do you?
You're right. I'll call the lawyer in the morning.
Very funny, but you know cosmetic surgery is common for women my age. It's one way to keep the boys interested.
Rob got up from his reading and stood behind her, studying her reflection in the mirror. He took her hand and smiled lovingly.
Wrinkles or not, you're adorable.
You're sweet, but you're not listening.
He rested on the back of her chair, meeting her eyes in the mirror.
You know, Mitzi just had her boobs done, and probably a facelift, too.
Yes, I thought so, but no one noticed her face.
You're making my point, funny man. Anyway, she gave me this rejuvenating oil to try.
Marla held up a small green vial.
It's experimental. You know Jerry's an amateur chemist?
I'm relieved he's not burdened by the ethics of experimenting on his wife.
Oh, that's not a problem. Jerry doesn't know she took it.
How do you know it's safe? Let me have a look at that.
He put his reading glasses on and moved closer to the mirror to find better light. Reading the tiny text on the label at arm's length with some difficulty, he mumbled,
Coenzyme nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide number 21. I wonder why Jerry abandoned versions 1 through 20.
Mitzi says this formula doesn't just slow down the aging process. It reverses it.
She playfully grabbed back the vial and, removing the stopper, applied a few drops to her fingertips and rubbed it vigorously on her forehead.
And I know it's safe because Mitzi and others have tried it.
Who besides Mitzi?
Lab rats?
He was instantly concerned and incredulous.
What, seriously? Lab rats?
Lab rats, okay?
She answered more loudly, ready for an argument.
But it's perfectly safe and I've noticed no bad side effects. How do I look?
Well, I think you look lovely. You're absolutely beaming.
Thank you for noticing,
she said with a satisfied smile.
You could do with the treatment yourself, old man. You're looking a little gray.
Yep. And feeling a little gray, too.
He rubbed his tired face and felt 1,000 rough whiskers. Rob took a long pause to consider her statement before replying.
But can youth be restored simply by oiling your skin or dyeing your hair? The story of my life is written in my wrinkles. Why should I hide it?
To be renewed is everything.
She studied her reflection from various angles.
What more could I ask for than to have my youth back? I'm going to whiten my teeth and get ready for bed.
While Marla floated out of the room brightened by her appearance, Rob picked up the vial and studied it again.
It's true that my eyesight is fading a bit, and my memory certainly isn't what it was.
He spoke half to her and half to his reflection. He leaned forward and noticed his hair was gray and grim as a cloudy day.
There's something to be said for the vitality of youth, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss it. On the other hand, it's a comfort to age gracefully.
He pulled his hair back, confirming a receding hairline, and frowned.
Sure, I've lost some endurance, but I've more than made up for it in wisdom and peace of mind. That's a fair trade.
He put the vial down reluctantly and walked away, saying a few encouraging words to himself.
Good character requires pride and self-control. A strong-willed man stands for discipline and integrity.
Then abruptly, Rob reconsidered. He turned on his heel and rushed back to pick up the vial. He removed the stopper and considered applying a few shiny drops to his wrinkled forehead as an experiment.
Not bold enough.
He had a different idea and went for maximum effect instead. He toasted,
Here's to vigor and good health.
And gulped down the bitter contents. The Poison Control Center said he was lucky to be alive. It was a difficult recovery for Rob, and the couple discontinued their social calendar for a month or two. But soon, they were back. There was always something going on at the country club, and that evening was no exception.
That was quite an event.
Rob loosened his tie and groped for his chair unsuccessfully. Marla took him by the arm and guided him to his seat.
There you are.
If it wasn't for you, my dear, I'd be selling pencils from a tin cup.
He removed his dark glasses and rubbed his sore eyes.
I hear you were quite popular tonight.
It was wonderful. We haven't been out for ages, and everyone was noticing me.
She turned to admire herself in the mirror.
I let them think it was a facelift. I had no idea the rejuvenating oil would affect my hair, too.
She caressed and ruffled her lush brown hair, luxuriantly draped about her shoulders.
It's so full, and no sign of gray. Amazing.
I told them it was a wig.
Very funny, but just because you can't see me anymore doesn't mean it's unimportant how I look. I got several compliments tonight. Your gorgeous wife was turning heads.
I'm sure you look lovely, my dear. And more importantly, I assume your friends were boiling with envy.
Rob smiled with some mischief. Ignoring him, she said,
I really enjoyed getting out and seeing everyone.
She settled down at her makeup table and removed her earrings, her eyes fixed on her fresh, youthful features.
But it's startling how decrepit everyone looks, except for me, of course. There was only one other attractive woman there, a blonde, but luckily she had crow's feet and was pale as chalk.
Rob settled back, deep into his comfortable chair.
I'm glad we went too. I couldn't bear not being able to hear music and talk to people.
There were definitely times when I wished there was a professional photographer on hand to take my photo tonight.
Marla continued to admire herself in profile.
A few weeks ago, I was a horrible sight. I had dark circles under my eyes like an old hag, and now those flaws are gone. The mirror is my favorite companion now.
Whatever happened to realizing true beauty is on the inside?
Oh, don't be ridiculous. You sound like an old relic. You know, this could open up a modeling career for me.
Marla twirled and posed in fashion show style. Rob's empty eyes stared in disbelief.
Is that your great ambition? Becoming an empty-headed mannequin?
She returned to preening.
You sound a little envious. I wish you hadn't drunk all that oil. I could use another treatment, and I barely have any left.
Well, it wasn't my smartest moment, but I was feeling desperately old. On the bright side, I can't see myself in the mirror anymore, so my age never crosses my mind.
Well, you look practically homeless. I wish you'd remember to shave.
Rob remained composed, and a calm acceptance passed through him.
A beard goes with my wrinkles and adds distinction. Just think of Hemingway or Lincoln.
It looks scruffy, like Castro.
She slipped out of her shoes and turned her back to him.
Make yourself useful and unzip me.
Losing my sight has forced me to develop my inner self and accept life as it comes.
He rose from his chair and fumbled for her zipper.
Tolerance, understanding, acceptance, patience, I got those. Nothing opened my eyes as much as blindness.
You made a stupid mistake by drinking all that oil. Why can't you just admit it? You're twisting your blindness into something deep and meaningful when it's not.
Sure, it was foolish and impulsive, but nothing can be done now.
Rob eased back into the softness of his cozy chair and stretched out his legs.
They say that recovery begins from your darkest moment, and now I literally know what they mean.
Marla shook her head, unimpressed by his insight.
They say that the blind have a greater perception than sighted people. If it were true, I'd expect you to recognize the gifts you always had, but ignored. Namely, me. Maybe you would finally appreciate me if you could see the new me.
I get tired of listening to you talk like this. It's such shallow nonsense. Why do you care so much about what others think?
The world doesn't care what's inside me, Rob. It's a simple but cruel fact that my value as a woman depends on my bone structure, clear skin, and button nose. So staying young isn't about vanity. It's about survival.
She turned to the mirror and admired herself again.
Besides, there's nothing wrong with me trying to look my best for you.
For me? I can't even see you, remember? I think you're giddy from self-adoration. Maybe the advantage of blindness is to see without superficial distraction.
Don't be so naive about how the world works.
She crossed her arms and rolled her eyes.
You can't deny that men were tripping over each other to spend time with me tonight. I even had a long talk with Jerry.
He seems lonely since Mitzi died.
He said it was a tragic accident, that's all. I think he's quite smitten with me.
Did you ask him for more oil?
Of course I did. I cornered him for almost an hour and eventually wore him down.
She pulled a fresh vial from her purse and placed it dead center on her makeup table.
He finally gave me his latest experimental formula and said it's just what's needed. I can't wait to try it.
You would think he'd give up on that after Mitzi killed herself.
Rob, I told you it was an accident. She just didn't know how powerful it was. And it was just like your accident, so you have no right to criticize.
Marla, she soaked in a bathtub full of it and drowned.
Perhaps that's true, but you should have seen her at the funeral.
She looked up to recall the event, resting her finger against a smooth cheek.
It was open casket, and she was the best-looking corpse anyone had ever seen. The mortician was so proud he didn't even have to make her up. She was so lovely. People still talk about it.
Good, she finally got the appreciation she wanted. But maybe you should reconsider trying the new formula now. You don't know if it's safe.
Don't worry, I'm not foolish enough to drink it like some people.
She proceeded to apply the contents to her forehead, cheeks, and neck with vigorous broad strokes.
The funeral was beautiful. She was so lovely,
Marla said quietly to the mirror.
Everyone was looking at her, admiring her.
Rob's nostrils flared as he detected a heavy, penetrating odor.
My dear, I wish you'd take it easy with that. It smells really strong.
Marla coughed gently, clearing her throat.
There used to be a time when I looked in the mirror and realized that what I saw was all that I would ever be. I don't have to accept that now.
I weep for you, Narcissus. Who are you beneath the surface?
She didn't acknowledge his teasing immediately and applied more oil until she was glistening, polished as a lacquered doll.
Beneath the surface is an old lady, and I'll strangle her with a musty shawl. I like being a stunning sex kitten, so get used to it.
Marla continued applying the oil to her throat.
There, I'm done. I can already feel warmth and a tightening on my chin and neck. But I think I'm coming down with something.
She coughed harder this time, wheezing to catch a breath.
We used to have such amusing conversations, and now you have nothing much to say. I don't recognize the person I used to know, and frankly, I'm tired of listening to your voice.
Rob sighed, wistful and disappointed. Marla rubbed her throat and studied the vial.
It's so tight, I can't...
Unable to speak, she clutched at her throat in a panic. Her eyes moved desperately from the mirror to the vial. She reached for him.
What's wrong? I can barely hear you.
He rose from his chair to help. Marla could barely whisper. She shook his shoulders in frustration. Her lips moved in silence. Her eyes were stretched wide with desperate panic. Faint grunts, coughs, and gasps were all he could hear. Finally, she released her grip on his shoulders and fainted onto the antique Persian wool rug. As he labored to move her to the bed, he didn't hear a sound, only her shallow breathing. Rob stumbled his way to the phone and dialed 911. Rob opened the front door. 2 paramedics rushed in.
It's my wife. She's unconscious.
One raced past Rob and arrived to find Marla sitting on the edge of the bed in the master bedroom. She had recovered somewhat, but was agitated, and her breathing was labored.
Geez, it smells like a truck stop in here. What's the solvent, sir?
Rob was at a loss to explain.
It's my wife's beauty treatment. I began chest compressions when she collapsed, but nothing helped.
She ignored him and examined Marla. The second paramedic rolled the stretcher and medic gear into the room and said,
I haven't seen a case this bad since some old lady drowned herself in a kerosene bathtub. What the hell is wrong with this neighborhood?
The paramedics whispered shorthand instructions that were impossible for Rob to grasp. While they were busy checking Marla's breathing and strapping on an oxygen mask, Rob heard one say,
She's responsive, with mild respiratory distress, and looks like my granny after she was embalmed.
Rob was shocked at what he overheard, but only asked,
Will she be okay?
There's considerable damage to her throat from inhaling the solvent, sir. It's unlikely she'll ever speak again, but good that you called in time. She's beginning to breathe on her own now.
They lifted her onto the stretcher. Marla was coming out of it, pointing to her throat, trying to explain.
Let's get her stable for transport.
Try not to talk, ma'am. You'll be okay. I have all kinds of experience resuscitating the elderly.
Marla was stunned by that remark and flopped back, offended. One paramedic rolled her on the rig out the front door to the waiting ambulance, while the other led Rob close behind.
You ride with your wife, sir. Try to be supportive. She's had a serious accident.
Rob fell into the seat next to Marla as the ambulance began to move. He searched his mind for something supportive to say. Maybe Jerry was right when he said his latest formula is just what's needed. He squeezed her hand.
Just relax and don't worry about your voice. At last people will admire your quiet beauty.
Marla wanted to scream, but found she could not.